And welcome back to another build video. Today I'm running with the Red Prince build. Now I already recorded this bit, and then in the dungeon that I'm showcasing right now, I got another piece of gear that improves the build, so I decided to start over and re-record it. Now there's a lot of aspects that actually this build relies on, unlike the Barbarian. And so we're going to go through aspects, then our Book of the Dead gear, and then we'll do abilities last. So as for our first aspect, the one that I think is the most important would be the Blood Surges Nova echoes again after a short delay, dealing 70% less damage. Well, you could look at it as 70% less damage, or you could look at it as a 30% increase in your damage, which is really what it is. Next, this one's not vital, but it helps because I really wanted this build to be a tanky ass build. So we have the basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for 2 seconds. That's fucking massive. Our gauntlets, I don't have a good set of gauntlets yet, so but it does pair well with our helmet, so I guess we'll read it anyhow. Instead of detonating immediately, Corpse Explosion summons a volatile skeleton that charges at a random enemy and explodes. Corpse Explosion's damage is increased by 37%. Now this has insane synergy, I imagine, with Adventurer's Helm of Explosive Mist. Blood Mist triggers a Corpse Explosion on surrounding corpses. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds. That's that helmet in that dungeon that you're probably watching right now. Next up, we have the Adventurer's Tunic of the Protector. This is not mandatory, but it does help a lot with survivability, and it's just the damaging an elite gives you a barrier. Now, the basic skills grant 39% attack speed, once again not mandatory, but it is a huge quality of life, basic attacking and getting your essence back as fast as possible. Blood Wave I do find to be mandatory, and it's the one that fires an additional blood wave, or it fires 2 additional blood waves, each dealing 56% less damage than the previous one. That's another huge damage bonus. And then here I have the you heal for 22% or 22 life per second for each close enemy up to 131 life per second. This helps a lot with our key passive that we end up going with later on, where every second that you're healthy, you gain a stack. At 15 stacks, you get a guaranteed overpower. So just having that's super helpful. It's not mandatory though. Now, as far as gear goes, I tried running this with two-handed weapons. I just feel that it's too slow, and I tried to run it with the I don't even know what they're called, the second damage weapon, and I just found that shields were overall best for me. I mean, you get a lot more armor, you get a 20% block chance, 56% damage reduction on a block, which is absolutely absurd, and you're still getting plus 80% main hand weapon damage. So you're not even losing that much damage by taking a shield. So it makes you just hella tanky, and on top of that, overall, this build just can't die. I've died maybe once running this whole build, and that was in a group of like a shitload of elites. So now, we do sacrifice all our skeletons, and we'll explain that later on when we get in the skill tree, but for here, I take critical strike chances increased by 5%. If you wanted to go full-blown tank, you could gain 15% non-physical resistance. I just find the extra crit chance to be more useful. Over here, we take your overpower damage is increased by 40%, but you can no longer erase mages. Well, we have 2 separate ways in this particular build to force a overpower. So, and our overpower is absolutely slapping. Look at this, 209%. And this is the level 50, by the way. sorry, where was I? And then we do sacrifice our golem. You deal 30% increased critical strike damage, but you lose the ability to summon a golem. I didn't want any summons. If you did want a summon in a golem slot, the best one here would be the blood golem, and it just makes you 15% tankier. But this increased critical strike damage is huge. So if you hit a overpower ability and it crits, it will fucking destroy everything. So to jump straight into the build, we take Hemorrhage here, burst an enemy's blood, dealing damage. Hemorrhage has a 20% chance to form a blood orb. Those blood orbs are super important to this build. They help you keep alive. After picking up a blood orb, your next Hemorrhage also deals damage to enemies around your target, and grants 2 additional essence per enemy hit. That's just really nice for resource management. Hemorrhage grants 1.6 base life as Fortify each time it hits an enemy, and has a 1.5% chance per enemy hit to fortify you for 100% base life. That's fucking massive. That's huge. And with how many times that you are autoing, because this is a very much build your essence up and then fucking dump it out, you'll see that 1.5% chance. You'll see that fortify constantly. Next up, Blood Surge. Draw blood from an enemy dealing damage, and expel a Blood Nova dealing damage. Blood Surge's Nova damage is increased by 10% per enemy drained up to 50%. Well, in these large packs of enemies, that's just constantly 50% extra damage, which is massive, I don't need to tell you. Blood Surge heals you for 2.5% of your maximum life, and when drawing blood from enemies. If 4 or more enemies are drawn from, then heal for an additional 2.5% of your maximum life. That becomes 5%, obviously. Now, in big packs of enemies, I find that I can get the Blood Nova off roughly 3 to 4 times every time I go to cast it. So that's just 15% of your base life back in your pocket. If an enemy dies by Blood Surge's Nova, while you are healthy, you gain 1 stack of Overwhelming Blood. When you have 5 stacks of Overwhelming Blood, your next Blood Surge overpowers. Once again, that is absolutely magnificent. I did run with the Supernatural Blood Nova. Each time an enemy is hit by Blood Surge Nova, you are fortified for 1% of your base life. While you have fortified for over 50% of your maximum life, Blood Surge deals 20% increased damage. That's super nice. And you can make it to where you have fortify, like you always get that 20% increased damage, which is really good. I just found the other one to be better, the Paranormal Blood Surge. Plus we have 10 million other ways to get fortify, so that's not really necessary. Now, I originally wasn't running Blood Mist in this build. I had Corpse Explosion. But after I was getting constantly CC'd with no way to defend against it, I picked up Blood Mist and then fell in love with it. This ability is fucking radical. Alright? Let me tell you something. Let me read it and then I'll explain why it's so good. Disperse into Bloody Mist, becoming immune for 3 seconds, your movement speed is reduced by 20%, and you periodically deal 29 damage to enemies and heal for 0.5% of your maximum life. So that's just a nice getaway whenever you're about to get CC'd or about to get walloping. Casting a skill that overpowers reduces the cooldown of Blood Mist. Super nice once again to have that CC immunity up constantly. And then Blood Mist fortifies you for 0.5% of your base life each time it hits an enemy. Now, what takes this ability from being a really good damage and CC immunity power to being a godlike ability is the overpower. Whenever you overpower and cast this, you'll end up, like, I was hitting people in the dungeon for like, what, 2,300 damage every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds. It was melting people. So this shit is super nice. We'll go over all the passives after we get through the abilities. Next, we take Decrepify. I did consider Iron Maiden, but Decrepify, being that this is a tanky build, having that 20% less damage dealt is super huge. Plus the slow doesn't hurt at all. Enemies hit while affected by, or enhanced Decrepify. Enemies hit while afflicted with Decrepify have up to a 10% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds. That's just another really nice CC. Enemies hit while inflicted with Decrepify have up to a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. That's huge, because we have this, so we can have this up more often even still. And our Corpse Tendrils, which, in my opinion, this is by far the best CC ability in the entire game. It does an insane amount for just one ability. Veins burst out of a corpse, pulling in enemies, stunning them for 3.8 seconds, or 3.1 seconds, and dealing damage. So that's super good in itself. It pulls enemies, and then it stuns them. That's 2 CCs right there. Well, let's add a third CC. Enemies who are in range of Corpse Tendrils are slowed for 50%. So 3 CCs in one ability, and then icing on the cake, enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils are made vulnerable for 3 seconds. 3 CCs and a weaken? That's fucking OP. I don't care what you think. That's gotta be the best ability in the entire game. Next up, we take Blood Wave. Conjure a tidal wave of blood that deals 2,000, well, deals damage and knocks back enemies. Blood Wave slows enemies, so this gains some CC. Blood Wave leaves behind 3 blood orbs as it travels. That's super duper nice. Fantastic. So that's all the abilities. We're going to jump into the passives now. Hued Flesh. Lucky hit. Your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at a target's location. That's super nice for using blood tendrils, and I would highly suggest Hued Flesh. And if you wanted to run with Corpse Explosion, that way you can get some corpses on the floor. Next passive we take is, well, here was a consideration, Spiked Armor. I just found for this particular build it wasn't all that worth. But over here we take Death's Embrace. Close enemies take 6% more damage, and you deal 9% less damage to you. Well, considering this is a tanky build, that helps a ton. You deal 12% increased damage to distant enemies. Great! Blood Nova has a huge AoE, so that comes into effect often. You deal 9% increased damage to cursed enemies. Well, that's one of our starting things, is we curse the enemies before we ever do anything. Next up we have Gruesome Mending. You can feel free to drop 2 points out of this and put them somewhere else of your own choice if you want. I just found that in those instances where you have 3 elites on you and they're beating you about the head and shoulders, having that 30% more healing from all sources is extremely useful. Next up, Coalesced Blood. While healthy, your blood skills deal 18% increased damage. Well, we have so much healing that we're almost always going to be getting that 18% increased damage. Drain Vitality. Hitting an enemy with blood skills has up to a 25% chance to fortify you for 8% base life. All of our abilities, except for Decrepify, are blood. Well, I guess and Blood Tendrils. I don't know if that really counts as a blood ability. But, yeah, we'll be getting Fortify like crazy. Tides of Blood. Your blood skills deal 15% increased overpower damage. This bonus is doubled while you are healthy. 30% increased damage on an overpower that we have 2 ways to force? Yes, please. Thank you. Absolutely, positively, let's take it. Necrotic Carapace. That is kind of a tongue twister. When a corpse is formed from your skills or your minions, fortify for 6% of your base life. Wow. How about that, huh? Just fortify and fortify and fortify. Increase damage reduction by 18%. Reduced by 2% for each active minion. We don't have any active minions, so we get that 18% bonus. Extremely nice. Memento Mori. Sacrificing both skeletal warriors and skeletal mages increases their sacrificial bonuses by 60%. That's huge. Why wouldn't you ever take that if you're gonna sacrifice your skeletons? And then last but not least, Rathma's Vigor. Increase your maximum life by 10%. which is extremely vital for a tank. After being healthy for 15 seconds, your next blood skill overpowers, which that is what this little icon right here is for. So, basic combo whenever you run into a group of enemies is you're going to run at them. You should have the Rathma's Fury or whatever it is, Rathma's Vigor up. So you're going to drop a Decrepify on a group of enemies, and then you're going to Blood Surge them. And then after one of them dies, which most of the time they do, you're gonna Corpse Tendril them, and then continue to Blood Surge them. And then as soon as Rathma's Vigor is back up, pop Blood Mist if you have it active, because it's probably your biggest fucking damage ability you have. Now if you're running into a huge group of enemies and you have your ult up, obviously same kind of combo. You pop Decrepify and then go into Blood Wave, and then Corpse Tendrils, Blood Surge, and so on. I mean, you'll get the idea. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna have 3 other Necromancer builds up pretty soon. I already have the ideas, I have the aspects, I just need to play around with the builds and test them out. So if you enjoyed, then like and subscribe. If you didn't, then don't. Either way it goes, though, have yourself a very fine day. Alright, let me record this again without fucking having me muted. If y'all were curious about the fashion at all, because I'm really proud of how this looks. Everything's got the red dye, so we're just gonna go through the armor pieces. We went Boneweave Helm, Sovereign Mail, Sovereign Vambraces and Greaves, or well, Tacits, and then we went with the Sovereign Greaves. Next up, the main hand weapon doesn't really matter. I couldn't find one that really fit, so I just picked one that has the gold. But the shield, we went with the Bone Shield, and this stuff just mashes so well. He definitely looks like the kind of guy that would use somebody's blood against him, so I thought it was very fitting. So enjoy the rest of the video.